They begged the stars for aid, but humanity's monsters responded. The stars above the planet Zellara shone cold and silent, but on the world below, nothing was quiet. Cities lay in ruins, smoke curling into the dark skies. Entire populations had been wiped out, leaving only the desperate and the terrified. The Harkari warlords, a coalition of the galaxy's most ruthless conquerors, had moved with terrifying speed. Entire fleets and armies had fallen before their advance. In the capital of Zellara, survivors huddled in shattered buildings, listening to the distant roar of explosions. Alara, a young engineer, clutched her younger brother's hand. She could feel his trembling, and she forced herself to stay calm. She had to. Panic could make people do foolish things, and foolish things meant death in these times. "They say someone is coming," whispered an old man nearby. His voice trembled like dry leaves. "A human warship, huge. They call them monsters." Alara frowned. Humans. She had heard stories of them before, strange creatures from a distant world, feared in some systems but thought to be legends in others. Could they really come? Could anyone stop the Harkari warlords? In the skies, alien warships moved in formation. Their metal hulls reflected the light of the burning cities below. The Harkari were organized and cruel, attacking without warning, leaving no survivors. Messages for help had already been sent to every corner of the galaxy, but none had returned a single word. Not one civilization dared intervene. Alara felt a wave of hopelessness. "We are alone," she whispered to her brother. He nodded, tears streaking his dusty cheeks. Suddenly, the sky darkened. At first, it seemed like an approaching storm. But the darkness moved in strange shapes, larger than any cloud, and it carried no sound of thunder. Survivors stopped and looked up, mouths opening in disbelief. Then came the light, not the gentle glow of stars or the fire of the Harkari bombs. This light was harsh, metallic, and almost alive. Ships appeared from hyperspace, massive and imposing. Their surfaces shimmered with strange patterns that seemed to pulse, like some kind of heartbeat. The Harkari fleet, which had been confident just moments ago, faltered. Signals of confusion spread across their communications. They had never seen such vessels. One of their commanders, Lord Kale, narrowed his many eyes and barked an order. "Identify them! Do not let them reach our fleet!" But identification was difficult. These human ships did not look like any known technology. They were enormous, monstrous in scale, some stretching nearly a kilometer long. Their hulls were dark, almost black, with jagged edges and glowing sections. Some seemed almost alive, moving as if sensing the enemy. Others opened compartments that revealed weapons of unimaginable power. The humans did not send messages of negotiation. They did not broadcast warnings or signals. They simply advanced, like predators moving through the stars. Alara and the others watched in awe and terror as the human ships approached. The first shots fired by the Harkari were met with perfect timing and precision. Human weapons activated, releasing devastating beams that cut through the Harkari ships, shields as if they were paper. Explosions lit the darkness, but the humans moved forward steadily, unharmed by the chaos around them. "Are they really humans?" a soldier muttered. His voice was shaky. "They said they were monsters." "Yes," Alara whispered, her eyes wide. "Monsters, but good monsters." The battle raged above the planet. Human strike ships darted between massive capital ships, dodging missiles and laser fire with impossible speed. They attacked the Harkari from unexpected angles, exploiting weaknesses that no alien strategist could have predicted. Every attack seemed calculated to maximize efficiency and minimize unnecessary damage to the planets below. From the ground, it was almost like watching living weapons. The humans were not just ships or machines. They were extensions of the human mind, coordinated perfectly, each crew member knowing exactly what to do. Some ships even appeared to communicate without signals, almost as if they were connected by thought. The Harkari, once proud and unstoppable, began to retreat. Their fleet was shattered, some ships destroyed entirely, others retreating in disorder. Lord Kale's face turned pale. This was not supposed to happen. No species in the galaxy had ever resisted the Harkari in such a way. Alara felt a strange emotion she had never experienced before. It was relief, yes, but also awe. The humans had arrived, and they were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. She could not understand how they could appear from nowhere and instantly strike with such precision and power. As the last of the Harkari fleet disappeared into hyperspace, the human ships turned toward the planet. A single vessel descended slowly into the atmosphere. Its hull reflected the burning skies, but it did not cause further destruction. Instead, it hovered above the capital, massive and quiet. A hatch opened, and from it emerged humans, tall, strong, and confident. Their armor was simple but practical, with strange devices strapped across their bodies. They carried weapons that glowed faintly, but there was no aggression in their stance. They looked around at the terrified citizens, assessing, calculating, and somehow reassuring them. One human stepped forward. His eyes were sharp, and his presence alone commanded attention. He did not speak in the local language, but a translator device activated, projecting clear words. "We are here to stop the warlords," he said simply. "We are humans. We do not fight for glory, we fight for life. Step back and remain safe." Ilara's heart pounded. Humans, monsters, and yet protectors. It was impossible to comprehend all at once. The survivors slowly emerged from hiding. Some ran forward with hope in their eyes, unsure if they were dreaming. The human commander did not flinch at the crowd. He nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the weight of responsibility. Meanwhile, other humans worked on the ground to stabilize the cities. They repaired damaged communications, cleared rubble, and set up defensive systems to prevent any immediate counterattack. Their work was methodical, efficient, and calm, almost serene amidst the chaos. Ilara noticed how humans moved together. Each person seemed to anticipate the next, as if they had trained for every possible situation. She had read stories of human coordination and endurance, but seeing it in action was unlike anything she had imagined. The Harkari would return, she knew. Their fleets were vast, and their hatred of humanity would only grow after this encounter. But the humans were ready. They did not panic. They did not wait for the enemy to strike. They were the storm that had arrived in response to desperate pleas that no one else had heard. Night fell on Zelera, but it was no longer a night of fear. Fires still burned, but the darkness now held the light of human ships above and the hope that life could continue. Survivors gathered in small groups, sharing stories of the human monsters not as legends but as reality. Ilara sat on the edge of a collapsed building, holding her brother close. "They are incredible," she whispered. "They came when no one else would. They saved us." Her brother nodded sleepily, his small hands clutching hers. "Will they stay?" he asked. Ilara shook her head. "I don't know, but they will always be out there somewhere watching, and if we need them, they will come." High above, human ships patrolled silently, ready for whatever came next. They were not merely soldiers. They were humanity's monsters, born from centuries of preparation, courage, and ingenuity. They struck fear into the hearts of the Harkari, and hope into the hearts of those who had no one left to turn to. Even the aliens who had sent distress signals across the galaxy began to whisper rumors. Some said the humans were unstoppable. Others claimed their ships were alive. Some told stories of individual humans who had survived impossible situations with nothing but skill and courage. The legend spread faster than any transmission, and soon, the name, human monsters, would be known across every star system. But for now, on Zelera, humans worked quietly, rebuilding, protecting, and watching. No one could predict their next move, and that was exactly how they liked it. Ilara finally stood, brushing dust from her clothes. She looked at the human commander, who was giving orders with calm precision. She could not understand his words fully, but she understood his purpose. He would protect life. He would strike down anyone who threatened it. And he would never stop until the galaxy learned that humans were a force unlike any other. For the first time in many days, Ilara allowed herself to hope. The Harkari might return, and other dangers might rise, but humanity's monsters had arrived. And with them, the galaxy had a chance. The stars above Zelera twinkled quietly. They had been silent witnesses to despair for too long. Tonight, they watched a new kind of power, humanity, terrifying and magnificent, take its first steps into a galaxy that had long forgotten courage. The night ended not with silence, but with a sense of awe. Humans had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The Harkari fleets had vanished into hyperspace, leaving the planet Zelera battered but alive. Yet above its surface, the human ships did not rest. They hovered silently, scanning the stars for any sign of returning enemies. Some were enormous, like black mountains floating in space. Others were smaller, sleek, and fast, darting among the massive vessels with an almost unnatural speed. To the alien survivors, they seemed like living predators, moving with a purpose that no machine or creature could imitate. The humans called these vessels monsters, but they were not monsters in the cruel sense. They were carefully built to endure the harshest battles, capable of self-repair, and piloted by humans trained for situations the galaxy had never imagined. Every ship was a combination of engineering brilliance and human daring, and together they formed a force unlike anything the Harkari, or any other species, had faced. On the ground, Alara watched with wide eyes as a team of humans descended from one of the massive ships. Their steps were confident, yet measured. They did not hurry, yet their presence calmed the trembling survivors around her. She could see that these humans were fearless but not reckless. Their focus was sharp, almost terrifying in its intensity. One of the human commanders, a tall man with steel-gray eyes, approached her. A small translator device activated. "We will protect this planet," he said. "Stay in safe areas. Move only when told." Alara nodded, understanding more from his posture than from the words. She could feel the confidence radiating from him, the unshakable certainty that he and his crew could handle whatever threat came next. Meanwhile, high above the planet, human ships began to patrol in patterns that seemed random to the alien observers, but were in fact perfectly calculated. Sensors swept for enemy ships, and smaller drones scouted the nearby systems. The humans were cautious, aware that the Harkari would not give up easily. Far away in the empty reaches of space, the Harkari regrouped. Lord Kale seethed with anger. His fleet had been shattered by a species he had dismissed as myths. Now he had no choice but to gather reinforcements, but he could not shake the feeling of fear that clung to him. "They are not just strong," he hissed to his lieutenants. "They are monsters, and they are coming for us." Kale's words spread quickly through the remaining Harkari forces. The name, human monsters, began to echo in every corner of the galaxy, whispered with fear and disbelief. No species had ever fought the Harkari so effectively, so efficiently. They had thought humanity weak and irrelevant, but the humans had proven otherwise. Back on Zellara, human engineers worked alongside the survivors. They repaired buildings, restored communications, and set up defenses in case of another attack. Alara found herself helping them, even though she knew her skills were small in comparison. The humans did not belittle her or the others. They guided them, teaching simple techniques to help strengthen the planet's safety. The humans explained their methods slowly, so the aliens could understand. Every repair, every adjustment was part of a larger plan. They were not just saving one planet, they were preparing for the war that would inevitably follow. Alara watched as a team of human mechanics worked on one of the smaller ships. To her, it seemed impossible. The vessel's armor was damaged in places where no alien technology could reach. But the humans moved as if the ship were alive, adjusting parts, running calculations, and repairing it with precision that amazed her. Sparks flew, machines hummed, and slowly the ship came back to life. "These humans," one Zellaran soldier whispered, "they are different. Not just strong, they think in ways we cannot understand." Alara nodded, her eyes fixed on the repair crew. "It is like they see the world differently. They are monsters, but the good kind." Days passed, and the human presence on Zellara became a symbol of hope. Children who had hidden in basements emerged to watch the humans work. Adults who had felt despair began to rebuild their homes, encouraged by the humans' quiet confidence. High above the planet, human ships continued to scan for threats. They had sensors capable of detecting enemies across light years, and they used every tool at their disposal. Smaller strike crafts patrolled near the planet, while massive monster vessels remained in orbit, a silent warning to any who might approach. Then came the first signs of another threat. Distant signals detected an incoming Harkari fleet, much larger than the one previously destroyed. This time they came with reinforcements from allied species, eager to test the humans' strength. The humans did not panic. Instead, they began preparing in a way that seemed both terrifying and beautiful. From the ground, Zellarans watched the preparations. Humans deployed defensive stations, guided smaller ships into formation, and trained local forces. Every move was coordinated, almost as if they had rehearsed for centuries. Alara found herself working alongside one of the human engineers, a young woman with short hair and sharp eyes. "We cannot fight them all," she said softly, "but we can make sure that every move counts." Alara nodded. Your ships, your people, they are monsters, but they are here to protect, not destroy. The engineer smiled faintly. That is what humans do. We are born to survive. We are born to fight when it is necessary, but we also fight to protect life. As the alien fleet approached, the human strike crafts took to the skies. The massive vessels hovered in orbit, their hulls glowing faintly as if anticipating the battle. The Harkari ships, confident as ever, moved into formation, expecting easy victory. But the humans did not attack immediately. Instead, they observed, studied the enemy, and waited for the perfect moment. Then, with shocking speed, the smaller human crafts darted forward. They weaved between the enemy ships, firing concentrated blasts that disabled engines and weapons with pinpoint accuracy. The Harkari were caught off guard. Their formations broke under the precision attacks, and panic began to spread. From the ground, survivors watched in awe. They could see ships twisting and turning in impossible ways, striking targets that no one else could hit. The humans moved like predators in the dark, their ships almost alive, anticipating every move of their enemies. The Harkari commander, Lord Kale, growled in frustration. They are not just attacking, he hissed. They are thinking, they are learning. How can this be? Above him, human monster ships moved with terrifying grace. They struck from angles that seemed impossible, and every attack was coordinated to ensure maximum impact with minimal effort. The Harkari were powerful, but against human ingenuity and planning, they were struggling. Alara felt a mixture of fear and awe. The humans were terrifying in their efficiency, yet they carried no cruelty toward the helpless. Their attacks were precise, not reckless. Every strike was calculated, every decision deliberate. As the battle continued, the humans demonstrated something the galaxy had never seen: resilience and creativity. When one ship took heavy damage, others moved to protect it, forming shields with their hulls and using coordinated fire to cover the retreat. Human crews adapted instantly to changing circumstances, finding solutions that seemed impossible in the heat of battle. The Harkari fleet began to falter. Ships were destroyed, engines crippled, and morale collapsed. Aliens who had once feared nothing began to whisper stories of the humans' monsters, their voices trembling. These were not merely ships. They were extensions of human courage and skill, born from centuries of preparation and determination. Alara watched as the final confrontation unfolded. The human commander led a small strike team directly into the heart of the Harkari formation. The fleet's leaders, expecting an easy victory, were shocked when the humans struck with perfect timing, disabling their main ships and scattering the rest. When the last of the Harkari ships retreated, silence fell over the battlefield. The humans did not celebrate. They simply regrouped, scanning the stars for any remaining threats. Alara felt a deep sense of wonder. "They are unstoppable," she whispered to the soldier beside her. "Yes," he replied, "and they are here to protect us. The humans, they are the monsters we were waiting for." As the day ended, the humans began helping the survivors rebuild. They taught the aliens how to repair ships, fortify cities, and prepare for future threats. They shared knowledge that seemed centuries ahead of what the galaxy had seen. At night, Alara looked up at the stars. The human ships glowed faintly in orbit, massive and silent, watching over the planet. She could not understand all of their technology, but she felt the certainty that the humans brought. They were not only strong, they were clever, resilient, and fearless. They were a force the galaxy had never known, and they had come when no one else dared. Some Zellarans began to tell stories, not of fear, but of hope. They spoke of the humans who came like monsters, terrifying in their power but merciful in their actions. They told of strike teams that moved like living weapons, of ships that seemed alive, and of courage that inspired even the weakest survivors. Alara knew that the Harkari would return and new dangers would rise, but humanity had shown its strength. They had arrived when all others had failed, and their monsters would stand against any threat. Above the planet, the human commander watched the stars, aware that battles were not over. He had seen enough to know that the galaxy was full of danger, but he also knew that humans and their monsters could face any challenge. Alara finally felt a sense of peace. For the first time in weeks, she believed that life on Zellara could continue. She looked at the human crew working quietly, repairing, organizing, and watching. They were terrifying in their efficiency, yes, but they were also protectors. The night ended not in fear, but in hope. Humans had arrived, and the galaxy had begun to understand that they were a force unlike any other. The monsters of humanity were here, and they would not be ignored. The stars above twinkled faintly, witnessing the rise of a legend. Humans had entered the galaxy, terrifying and brilliant, and their presence would be remembered forever. The galaxy had begun to whisper the name of the humans. Even in far-off systems untouched by war, the stories traveled faster than any fleet or message could. They called them monsters, but the word carried both awe and fear. The humans were terrifying, yes, but they were also protectors, saviors in a galaxy that had grown careless and arrogant. On Zellara, survivors worked alongside the humans to rebuild what had been destroyed. But the aliens' admiration was mixed with uncertainty. How could a species so new to the galaxy possess such skill, power, and bravery? Many began to suspect that humanity's true strength went beyond technology. It was something deeper, something the galaxy had never seen before. Zellara walked alongside the human commander, whose name was Captain Ryan. He moved with confidence, assessing the planet's defenses and instructing teams quietly. His eyes, sharp and calculating, missed nothing. "Why do they fear us so much?" Zellara asked. She had been observing the humans closely, studying how they planned, moved, and worked together. "Is it just the ships?" Captain Ryan shook his head. "It is more than the ships. It is how we fight, how we think, and how we endure. Most species rely on power or numbers. Humans, we use strategy, courage, and adaptability. That is why we survive where others fail." Zellara nodded slowly. She could see what he meant. The humans were unlike any other beings she had met. They were disciplined, clever, and unafraid. But there was also a strange warmth to them. They were terrifying in battle, yet kind to those they protected. In orbit, the human fleet remained alert. Scouts continued to monitor the surrounding systems for signs of enemy activity. Reports came in of distant fleets gathering, likely drawn by the stories of the humans' first battle. The galaxy's strongest warlords and mercenaries were curious and fearful about the humans who had arrived on Zellara. Lord Kale, humiliated by his previous defeat, had been working tirelessly to rebuild his fleet. He consulted his advisors, all of whom were shaken by the humans' efficiency and courage. "They do not fight like others," Kale said, his multiple eyes narrowing. "Every strike is precise, every move calculated. How can such small numbers destroy fleets like ours?" The Harkari were not alone in their fear. Across the galaxy, other species who had heard the rumors began to take caution. Merchants delayed trade routes, military commanders postponed conquests, and politicians debated alliances. Humans were becoming more than a threat. They were a presence that demanded respect. Back on Zellara, the human forces were preparing for the next wave of attacks. Smaller strike crafts flew in patterns that seemed chaotic, but were actually calculated to confuse and trap enemies. Massive capital ships hovered like dark mountains above the planet, ready to strike any fleet that approached. Zellara watched as a small team of humans practiced maneuvers in the planet's atmosphere. They executed turns and attacks that seemed impossible, weaving between clouds and explosions with precision that left her breathless. One young human, a pilot named Mara, noticed Zellara watching. She smiled faintly. "Do not be afraid," Mara said, her voice calm. "We are here to protect, not harm. You will see what humans can do when we fight together." Zellara nodded. She felt a strange sense of calm around the humans. Despite their power, they were not cruel. Their skill was meant to protect life, not destroy it unnecessarily. Suddenly, alarms blared across the planet. Sensors had detected a new fleet approaching, larger and more organized than the previous one. This time, it was not just the Harkari. Allies from other systems had joined, hoping to test the humans' strength and claim glory. The humans did not panic. They moved with a purpose that seemed almost alive. Strike crafts launched immediately, weaving between the incoming enemy ships. Massive vessels deployed defensive shields and positioned themselves to protect the planet's surface. The aliens on the ground watched in awe as the humans engaged the fleet. The smaller crafts darted like swallows, striking at weak points in the enemy formation. Their attacks were precise, disabling engines and weapons with minimal effort. The Harkari and their allies were shocked. Their fleets had been confident, but the humans moved too quickly, too unpredictably. Every strike seemed anticipated before it happened. For the first time, many alien commanders felt fear, not of death, but of the humans' brilliance. Captain Ryan's voice came through the translator. Focus on survival, protect the civilians, use strategy, not force alone. Alara realized that this was the key. The humans' power was not just in their weapons or ships, it was in their minds. They could see solutions where others saw only danger. They could adapt instantly to any situation, turning what seemed like defeat into victory. As the battle raged, the humans displayed teamwork that astonished everyone. When one craft was surrounded, others moved to create openings. When a ship was damaged, human engineers repaired it mid-battle, keeping it in the fight. No species had ever shown such coordination. Lord Kale, observing from his flagship, was growing desperate. "They are learning faster than we can fight," he roared. "How can a species so small, so young, be this strong?" The Harkari fleet began to break apart. Some ships fled, while others were destroyed. Even the Allied fleets hesitated, unsure how to face an enemy that seemed to predict every move. On the ground, Zellarans began to cheer. The humans were saving their world again, and this time the enemy fleet was larger than before. Yet humanity's monsters moved like living shields and swords, protecting life while striking down the aggressors. Alara saw Mara maneuver a small strike craft through a maze of enemy fire. She executed turns that defied belief, striking critical points in the enemy's formation and escaping without a scratch. It was as if the human pilots were dancing with the stars, turning danger into opportunity. Then, a massive human vessel descended from orbit. Its hull pulsed faintly, and strange patterns shimmered across its surface. It fired a concentrated energy beam at the heart of the enemy fleet, causing a chain reaction that crippled multiple warships. Survivors on the ground gasped. Even those who had heard the stories could not believe what they were seeing. The humans were monsters, yes, but they were the kind of monsters that inspired hope rather than fear. As the battle ended, the surviving enemy ships retreated. The humans did not pursue recklessly. Instead, they regrouped, repaired their vessels, and prepared for whatever might come next. Their discipline was unmatched, their strategy flawless. Alara approached Captain Ryan once more. "Why do you fight this way?" she asked. "Why not destroy everything?" "You could easily wipe out your enemies." He shook his head. "Power without purpose is meaningless. We fight to protect life, not to conquer. Our goal is survival, yes, but also to give hope to those who have none. That is what makes us strong." Alara nodded slowly. She began to understand. The human strength was not just in their weapons, it was in their minds, their courage, and their values. They had prepared for centuries not just to fight, but to survive and protect. Across the galaxy, word spread. Alien species who had once mocked humanity now whispered stories of the monsters that had come from the stars. Legends grew of human strike teams that could turn impossible battles into victories. Tales spoke of ships that seemed alive, of humans who adapted instantly, and of courage that no species had ever seen. Even Lord Kale in the depths of space could not ignore the truth. His fleet had been defeated twice, not by numbers, not by brute strength, but by humans' cleverness, bravery, and teamwork. "They are more than warriors," he muttered. "They are a force beyond comprehension. They are monsters, but the galaxy must respect them." On Zellara, survivors began rebuilding with hope. Children played among the repaired buildings, watched by human guardians who ensured their safety. Adults began to work together, encouraged by humans' presence. The planet had been saved not by luck, not by distant allies, but by humanity's monsters, unpredictable, brilliant, and unstoppable. Alara realized something else as she watched the humans. They were not heroes in the traditional sense. They did not seek glory or reward. Their victories were quiet, efficient, and purposeful. They fought not for themselves, but for life itself. At night, the human fleet remained in orbit, massive and silent, watching the stars. They knew the Harkari would not give up easily. Other threats lurked in distant systems, curious and cautious of the humans' power, but they were ready. Their monsters were prepared for anything, and their courage was limitless. Alara looked at Captain Ryan. "Do you think they will come again?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "They always do. Some will test us. Others will try to learn from us, but we will always be ready. That is what makes humans humans." The stars above Zellara twinkled quietly, reflecting the presence of the human fleet. They had come as monsters, terrifying and powerful, but they had also brought hope. The galaxy had begun to understand that humans were not to be underestimated. Their strength was unmatched, their courage unmatched, and their determination unmatched. And so, fear began to turn into respect. Aliens across the galaxy whispered stories of the humans' monsters, and even the bravest warlords felt unease at the thought of facing them. Alara knew that more battles would come. The Harkari and their allies would return. Other dangers would arise. But humanity had shown the galaxy something it had long forgotten, that courage, skill, and determination could overcome even the greatest odds. And the humans' monsters would be there, always watching, always ready, or the galaxy had begun to tremble. Stories of humans, the monsters of the stars, spread faster than any fleet could travel. Worlds that had never seen battle shivered at the thought of humans' arrival. Even the most powerful empires, the most ruthless warlords, and the most cunning mercenaries whispered the same truth. Humans were unlike anything they had faced before. On the planet Zellara, survivors watched from the ground as human ships prepared for the next wave. Massive monster vessels hovered in orbit, dark and imposing, while smaller strike crafts zipped between them, practicing maneuvers that seemed impossible. The humans were calm, focused, and ready. Alara and her brother stood with other survivors, watching as Captain Ryan coordinated the fleet. He did not shout orders. He gestured, spoke quietly, and yet every human crew seemed to move as one. Each strike craft, each massive vessel, knew its role without hesitation. "This is incredible," Alara whispered. "They fight like one being, one mind." A human engineer working nearby smiled faintly. "We call it teamwork," she said. "But it is more than that, it is trust. Each of us trusts the others to do what must be done without question." Suddenly, the sensors picked up a massive fleet approaching from beyond the outer systems. This was not just the Harkari. Allies from multiple empires had joined, drawn by curiosity and fear. They hoped to crush the humans before their reputation grew even larger. Captain Ryan did not panic. Instead, he studied the enemy formation, calculating every possibility in his mind. "Prepare the strike crafts," he said. "Deploy defensive shields. We will engage when the time is right." Alara watched in awe as the humans moved with precision. Ships maneuvered into perfect positions, defensive grids formed around the planet, and scouts darted forward to study the enemy. Every movement seemed simple, yet it was a masterpiece of planning and coordination. The enemy fleet appeared vast and intimidating. Thousands of ships, bristling with weapons, moved in tight formations, ready to crush the humans. But as they drew closer, they realized something strange. Human vessels did not scatter. They did not panic. They remained perfectly aligned, ready for the oncoming storm. Then, without warning, the humans struck. Smaller crafts darted forward like shadows, striking at the enemy's weak points. Massive ships fired beams that tore through shields with terrifying precision. Explosions rippled through the enemy fleet, but the humans moved with perfect timing, avoiding damage while maximizing their impact. Alara's heart pounded as she watched the battle unfold. The humans were terrifying in their efficiency, yet there was no cruelty in their actions. They struck only where necessary, avoided unnecessary destruction, and protected life wherever possible. The enemy commanders were shocked. Their largest ships were destroyed within moments, and their formations collapsed under the relentless human assault. Ships that had never known fear were now retreating, unsure how to fight an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move. Captain Ryan led a small strike team into the heart of the enemy formation. His ship weaved between massive warships, dodging energy blasts and missiles with impossible precision. Behind him, other human crafts followed, creating chaos in the enemy ranks. Alara watched as Mara, the young pilot she had met before, executed daring maneuvers, striking critical systems in the enemy ships. Her movements were fluid, almost like a dance, yet every strike had deadly accuracy. "This is incredible," Alara whispered. "They are unstoppable." The humans' monsters moved as if alive. Massive vessels adjusted their shields to protect smaller crafts, while coordinated attacks disabled enemy weapons and engines. Human crews repaired damaged ships mid-battle, keeping them in the fight. Every move was calculated, every decision deliberate, every action deadly. The Harkari and their allies began to panic. They had faced countless enemies before, but nothing like this. Humans did not rely on brute force alone. They used strategy, adaptability, and courage that no other species had ever displayed. Lord Kale, observing from his flagship, growled in frustration. "They are learning faster than we can fight," he hissed. Every strike, every maneuver, it is as if they see our thoughts. The humans were not reading minds. They were using something even more powerful: instinct, skill, and preparation. Every human crew had trained for scenarios like this, and their planning extended centuries into the past. They were ready for every possibility, and the galaxy had never seen such coordination. As the battle reached its peak, the humans executed a daring maneuver. Captain Ryan's ship and a small strike team moved directly toward the enemy flagship, the heart of the fleet. The enemy expected a frontal assault, but the humans struck from an unexpected angle, bypassing defenses and hitting critical systems. Explosions tore through the flagship, disabling its engines and communications. The rest of the enemy fleet faltered, unable to respond effectively. Panic spread across the alien forces as ships fled or were destroyed. Alara gasped. "They are heroes," she whispered, "but not for glory, for life." The humans did not celebrate. They regrouped, repaired their ships, and continued to protect Zelara. The enemy fleet, now shattered, retreated into hyperspace. The humans had won decisively, but they remained vigilant. More threats could come, and they were ready for them. On the ground, Zelarans began to rebuild once more. Children played in the repaired streets, and adults worked alongside humans to restore their homes. The planet had been saved not by luck, but by humans' monsters, terrifying, brilliant, and unstoppable. Alara approached Captain Ryan once again. "Why do you fight this way?" she asked. "You could have destroyed them completely." He shook his head. "We do not fight to destroy, we fight to protect. Every action has purpose. Life is worth more than conquest or revenge. That is why we survive where others fail." Alara nodded slowly. She began to understand. Human strength was not just in their weapons or ships. It was in their minds, their courage, and their values. They fought not for themselves, but for life itself. Across the galaxy, word spread of the humans' victory. Alien species who had once mocked humanity now whispered stories of the monsters that had come from the stars. Legends grew of strike teams that could turn impossible battles into victories, of ships that seemed alive, and of courage that no species had ever seen. Even Lord Kale could not ignore the truth. His fleet had been defeated twice, not by numbers or brute force, but by humans' cleverness, bravery, and teamwork. "They are more than warriors," he muttered. "They are a force beyond comprehension. They are monsters, and the galaxy must respect them." On Zelara, survivors worked alongside humans to prepare for the next wave. Defensive stations were reinforced, communication networks were strengthened, and training programs were set up to teach Zelarans how to defend themselves. Humans shared knowledge that seemed centuries ahead of what the galaxy had seen. Alara realized that humanity's monsters were not only weapons. They were teachers, protectors, and symbols of hope. They had arrived when the galaxy had forgotten courage, and they had changed everything. As night fell, the human fleet remained in orbit. Massive vessels glowed faintly in the starlight, ready for whatever came next. Captain Ryan watched the horizon, aware that threats could appear at any moment. But he was not afraid. Humans were prepared for anything. Their courage, skill, and determination were unmatched, and the galaxy had only begun to understand the monsters of humanity. Alara looked at the stars and felt hope for the first time in her life. The humans had arrived, and with them came a force the galaxy had never known. They were terrifying, brilliant, and unstoppable, but they fought for life, for hope, and for those who could not defend themselves. And so the galaxy began to learn a new truth. Humans were monsters, yes, but they were the kind of monsters who brought light in the darkness, hope where there was despair, and courage where there was fear. Alara knew that more battles would come. The Harkari would return, new enemies would rise, and dangers would appear in distant systems. But humanity's monsters would always be ready. They were a force the galaxy could not ignore, a presence that demanded respect, and a power that could protect life where others failed. The stars above Zelara twinkled quietly, reflecting the human fleet in orbit. The galaxy had begun to understand that humans were unlike any other species. They were monsters among the stars, terrifying, brilliant, and unstoppable. But they were also protectors, heroes, and symbols of hope. And as long as humans existed, the galaxy had a chance.